A young doctor moves to a small town and becomes intrigued by strange movements in the home of her neighbor, an elderly and reclusive man who might be hiding something that shocks the town. Amanda adjusted the rearview mirror one more time before turning onto the road that led to the small town of Willow Creek. The autumn leaves, painted in shades of orange and red, created a colorful carpet along the way, and the soft evening light reflected off the wooden houses by the roadside. She had left behind bustling Baltimore, seeking a fresh start in a place that promised the tranquility she so desperately needed after the recent loss of her mother. The house she had rented was modest, with a wooden porch and windows overlooking the main street. After unloading her bags and boxes, Amanda took a walk around the neighborhood to stretch her legs and familiarize herself with the new surroundings. The houses were close to each other, each with its own charm and quirks. However, one in particular caught her eye. The house at the end of the street, set apart from the others by a large unkempt garden and fences that begged for repair. It was Mr. Grayson's house, according to the real estate agent who had rented her the house. He was said to be an elderly, reclusive man whose wife had passed away a few years ago and whose children never visited. The house seemed to hold memories of a better time, with its dusty windows and broken swing hanging from the backyard tree. Amanda felt a twinge of curiosity mixed with compassion. Who was this man living so isolated from the rest of the world? What had happened for him to withdraw so much? Determined not to jump to conclusions, she returned home, promising herself she would try to get to know Mr. Grayson better in the coming days. In the following days, as she adjusted to the routine of the small town, Amanda occasionally observed Mr. Grayson. He rarely went out, except to get the mail or briefly tend to the garden. But it was during the nights that the real peculiarity began. Lights would turn on and off at odd times, and shadows moved behind the closed curtains. One Friday night, while Amanda sipped tea looking out the kitchen window, she noticed a female shadow passing by the window on the second floor of Mr. Grayson's house. The silhouette was fragile and hesitant, very different from the hunched posture of the elderly man she had seen during the day. Her heart raced at the possibility that it wasn't just Mr. Grayson living there. Could it be a caregiver? A late visit from an unknown relative? Or, as suggested by some older residents and town gossip, Mr. Grayson's daughter who had supposedly moved away years ago? The curiosity was strong enough that the next morning, Amanda decided to visit the local library, hoping to learn more about the Grayson family and perhaps understand the mystery of the figure in the window. In the Willow Creek Library, among dusty shelves and the soft smell of old paper, Amanda began her search for local stories. The librarian, Mrs. Higgins, a silver-haired lady with glasses hanging from a chain, was more than willing to help when she learned of Amanda's interest in the Graysons. "Oh, the Graysons," sighed Mrs. Higgins, running her hand over the books until she found a thick volume of town records. "They were a very respected family, you know. But things changed after the daughter, Eliza, disappeared. Well, she didn't really disappear. Everyone says she just left after a big fight with her father." Flipping through the book, Amanda found a faded photograph of the Grayson family. Mr. Grayson was a robust and smiling man in the photo, very different from the recluse she knew. Beside him stood a young blonde woman, her serious expression contrasting with the joy of the others. After Eliza's mother died, things seemed to deteriorate quickly, Mrs. Higgins continued, watching Amanda absorb every detail. And then, about 5 years ago, Eliza just stopped appearing in town. Rumors say she moved to the big city, but you know how small towns are, the stories keep spinning. Caught between compassion and intrigue, Amanda thanked Mrs. Higgins and decided she needed to learn more. She spent the rest of the day in the library, reading about the town's history and its notable families, but her thoughts kept returning to the illuminated window and the shadow she had seen. Determined to understand the situation better, Amanda chose a day when she saw Mr. Grayson working in the garden to approach him. With a ready excuse about wanting to meet the neighbors, she crossed the street, her heart beating with a mix of nervousness and determination. "Hello, Mr. Grayson," she began, trying to keep her voice calm and friendly. "I'm Amanda. I live right over there. It's nice to finally meet you." Mr. Grayson, surprised, straightened up and wiped his hands on his pants. "Ah, yes, the new girl. Amanda, right? What brings you here?" "I just wanted to introduce myself and maybe learn more about the neighborhood. Mrs. Higgins at the library mentioned you've lived here for a long time." The mention of Higgins seemed to make the old man hesitate, but after a moment he nodded. "Yes, I've been here since I was born, and my father before me. It's a good place to live, despite everything." During the conversation, Amanda noticed how Mr. Grayson avoided looking at the second-floor windows. When she mentioned the garden and how she would love to learn about gardening, he seemed relieved, happy to change the subject. "I could use some help, actually," he admitted with a small smile. "Eliza used to take care of the garden with her mother. I never had the same knack for it." The name, Eliza, fell between them like a stone in the water, creating ripples that Amanda knew held deep meaning. "Eliza seems to have been very special," she ventured softly, watching his reaction. Mr. Grayson's face closed for a moment, a glimpse of pain passing through his eyes before he composed himself. Yes, she is. This inadvertent confirmation that Eliza might still be around strengthened Amanda's resolve to find out more. She offered to help in the garden that week, giving her a reason to return. With this small victory, Amanda said goodbye, her mind spinning with possibilities. She was closer to understanding Mr. Grayson's secrets, but knew the truth could be more complicated and painful than she imagined. Over the next week, Amanda spent several hours helping Mr. Grayson in his garden. Amidst rusty tools and flowers in need of care, she delicately tried to bring up more information about Eliza without seeming intrusive. Mr. Grayson grew increasingly open, sharing stories about his family and Willow Creek's past, but carefully avoided mentioning anything recent about his daughter. Intrigued and frustrated by his evasions, Amanda decided to take a more direct approach. She visited the library again, where Mrs. Higgins, now familiar with her interest, handed her a box of newspaper clippings and articles about the Grayson family. Among them, Amanda found a series of articles about a trial from a few years ago involving a local businessman who was accused of fraud. Marginal notes indicated that Eliza might have been a key witness but never appeared in court. The night brought an unexpected opportunity when Amanda observed a dim light in Eliza's room. She decided to take a risk. She dressed quickly and went to Mr. Grayson's house, knocking softly on the door. To her surprise, it was Mr. Grayson himself who opened, his face marked by lines of worry. "Sorry to bother you, Mr. Grayson, but I thought I saw someone in Eliza's room. Is everything all right?" Amanda asked, trying to appear concerned rather than curious. The old man hesitated, looking over his shoulder as if he feared the conversation might be overheard. "It's complicated. Please come in." Once inside the house, Amanda could feel the tension that seemed to permeate every corner. Mr. Grayson led her to the kitchen, where tea was served in silence. After a few minutes, he began to speak, his voice low and laden with emotion. "Eliza is here," he finally revealed. "She came back a few months ago after years of trying to hide. She got involved with dangerous people, and when she tried to get out, they threatened her life." Amanda absorbed the words, each one adding weight to the story she was only beginning to understand. "Is she safe now?" she asked, trying to gauge the severity of the situation. "I hope so. She's recovering, but she doesn't want to see anyone, afraid that her presence here might put others at risk too," he explained, running his trembling hands through his gray hair. The realization hit Amanda like lightning. The lights, the shadows, the evasions, all made sense now. "Mr. Grayson, if there's anything I can do to help..." I can try talking to some people I know. Maybe ensure more security? He looked at her with a mix of hope and despair. No, no. That could make things worse. Just, please keep this secret. Moved by the man's sincerity and desperation, Amanda nodded. I understand. But don't hesitate to ask for help if you need it. I'm here. The conversation stretched into the night, with Mr. Grayson sharing more details about his daughter's struggles. When Amanda finally said goodbye, she felt burdened with the responsibility of the secret she now shared. Back at her house, she reflected on the night's revelations. The situation was delicate, and Amanda knew that any misstep could have serious consequences. She decided that the first thing she would do the next morning was research more about witness protection and perhaps find a discreet way to offer help to Eliza, even indirectly. In the following days, the tension in Willow Creek seemed to grow, as if the whole town felt the weight of unspoken secrets. Amanda continued her regular visits to Mr. Grayson's garden, but now with a new perspective on the comings and goings at that house. She noticed curious glances and whispers among the neighbors, making her realize that her frequent presence hadn't gone unnoticed. One afternoon, while pruning and planting, Mr. Grayson mentioned, almost casually, that some of the older residents had started questioning Amanda's presence in town. They don't see a new face around here without suspecting some hidden agenda, he explained, his tone mixing worry and a slight resentment. Amanda felt a chill down her spine, realizing that her curiosity could be causing problems not only for herself, but also for Mr. Grayson and Eliza. Maybe I should reduce my visits to avoid causing more talk, she suggested, though the idea of abandoning Mr. Grayson at such a delicate time saddened her. No, he replied quickly, your help has been a blessing, but perhaps we should be more discreet about our meetings. Amanda agreed, and they decided to limit the time they spent together to the minimum necessary to maintain the garden, hoping this would calm the rumors. However, the situation escalated when, one morning, Amanda was confronted by a small group of residents led by Martha, a local matriarch known for her influence. Amanda, dear, we just want to understand better what a city girl is doing in our little Willow Creek. You've been very close to old Grayson, haven't you? The direct approach and thinly veiled insinuations put Amanda on the defensive and made her worried. She tried to explain her interest in gardening and how she was just helping a neighbor, but she knew her words sounded weak even to her own ears. Well, I just hope your intentions are really that innocent, said Martha, with a look that mixed distrust and a clear warning. That confrontation was a turning point for Amanda. She realized she needed to act, not just to protect Eliza and Mr. Grayson, but also to safeguard her own position in the community. That night, she spent hours on the internet researching witness protection and discreetly contacting former college friends who now worked in areas that might offer some kind of legal or security assistance. Meanwhile, she began to develop a more concrete plan. If she could present something significant at the next town council meeting, she might change the narrative about her presence and activities. She decided she would organize a presentation on the benefits of community gardening, highlighting how her work with Mr. Grayson had improved not only the garden but also his life. Additionally, Amanda decided it was time to bring Eliza into a more active role in her own defense, if possible. In the coming days, she gently probed Mr. Grayson about the possibility of Eliza contributing, even anonymously, with information or testimonies that could help ensure her safety. I'll talk to her, promised Mr. Grayson, clearly worried but recognizing that something needed to change. With these preparations underway, Amanda felt she was finally taking control of the situation, turning her initial anxiety into concrete actions. Every step was calculated, knowing that any mistake could have unpredictable repercussions. The town council meeting was the perfect setting for Amanda to implement her plan. With the community hall full of curious residents and a palpable air of expectation, she presented with confidence, supported by colorful charts and photos of Mr. Grayson's garden before and after her interventions. As you can see, the work I've done is not just about gardening, but about how we can transform our community, bringing beauty and cohesion through caring for our environment, Amanda explained, her voice firm and clear filling the space. The presentation was well received by many, but Amanda knew the real challenge was yet to come. At the end, when the Q&A session opened, Martha stood up, her challenging gaze fixed on Amanda. "And what about Mr. Grayson and his daughter, Eliza? There are rumors, you know," Martha began, leaving the insinuation hanging, a tactic to provoke responses without making direct accusations. Amanda took a deep breath, prepared for this moment. "Mr. Grayson is a respected citizen, and my friendship with him and his desire for privacy should be respected. Eliza, like many young people, chose to seek opportunities outside of Willow Creek, which is natural and healthy. We should encourage our young people to explore the world and bring back new ideas and energy to our town." Her speech was carefully constructed to quell the rumors without revealing Eliza's true situation. The murmur of approval from most showed her message had been well received. In the days following the town council meeting, Amanda felt a change in the town's atmosphere. People seemed more open and less prone to gossip, at least for now. She continued her work with Mr. Grayson, who shared that Eliza was considering appearing publicly again, encouraged by Amanda's defense. "Even though she's fearful because of what happened to her in the past, she's thinking about showing up again, maybe even getting involved in community projects here," Mr. Grayson said one day as they watched the new growth in a flower bed they had planted together. Amanda smiled, feeling a twinge of pride and relief. That would be wonderful. She has so much to offer. While helping Mr. Grayson prune some rose bushes, Amanda reflected on her journey so far. She had not only helped bring Eliza back to community life, but also planted the seeds of lasting change in Willow Creek. Even so, some thoughts remained in Amanda's mind. What is Eliza hiding from her past that she hopes the community has forgotten? What did she do that the community feared her presence? What is the risk to Eliza and her father with her public reappearance in town? Eliza Grayson looked out the bus window as it pulled into the small Willow Creek station. The familiar scenery welcomed her, but nostalgia was mixed with anxiety. She was returning to her hometown after years away, carrying heavy secrets that still haunted her. As she got off the bus, her father, Mr. Grayson, was there, waiting with a tired but genuine smile. "Welcome back, daughter," he said, pulling her into a tight hug. Eliza felt a mix of relief and guilt as she hugged him back. "It's good to be home, Dad." Mr. Grayson's house, with its well-kept garden and cozy porch, felt like a refuge, but Eliza knew the real test would be the community's acceptance. News of her return had quickly spread through the small town, and she noticed curious glances and whispers as she walked the streets. Eliza decided the best way to reintroduce herself would be to attend a community event. There was a fair at the Central Square the next weekend, and she thought it would be a good opportunity to show she was back for good. "Dad, I'm going to the fair this weekend," she said during dinner. Mr. Grayson looked at her with concern. "Are you sure? You know how people can be." "I know, but I have to try. I want to rebuild my life here," Eliza replied, determined. The weekend arrived quickly. Eliza dressed simply but elegantly, hoping to make a good impression. When she arrived at the Central Square, the fair was already in full swing, with food stalls, crafts, and live music. She moved among the booths, greeting familiar faces and answering curious questions with a polite smile. Meanwhile, Martha, one of the town's most influential figures, watched from a distance with critical eyes. She disliked the idea of Eliza being back in town, especially because it reminded her of the problems her presence had caused in the past. Martha began whispering to other residents, planting seeds of doubt and distrust about Eliza's true intentions. By the end of the day, Eliza felt exhausted but relieved to have taken the first step. Some residents welcomed her warmly, but most still looked at her cautiously. She knew it would take time to regain their trust, but she was willing to fight for it. The next morning, as Eliza had coffee on the porch, a young woman approached, carrying a basket of fresh fruit. "Hello, you must be Eliza. I'm Amanda, your neighbor," the woman said with a warm smile. Eliza smiled back, grateful for the warm reception. "Yes, that's me. Nice to meet you, Amanda." Amanda handed her the basket. "Welcome back to Willow Creek. I heard you're trying to reintegrate into the community. If you need any help, I'm around." "Thank you, Amanda. I really appreciate that," Eliza replied, feeling immediate relief at finding a friendly face. In the days that followed, Amanda and Eliza began spending more time together. Amanda showed Eliza the changes in town and introduced her to new residents. Their friendship blossomed quickly, bringing a sense of normalcy to Eliza's life. However, Martha continued to spread rumors. She disliked the closeness between Eliza and Amanda, fearing Amanda might be influenced by the problems Eliza carried. At a community meeting, Martha wasted no time raising her concerns. "We need to be careful about who we let get involved in our projects," Martha said, looking directly at Eliza. "We can't forget the past." Eliza felt the weight of Martha's words, but maintained her composure. Amanda, sensing the tension, spoke up in defense of her friend. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Martha. Eliza is here to contribute and start over. We should give her that opportunity." Martha rolled her eyes but said nothing more. Eliza knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was grateful to have Amanda by her side. With the support of her new friend, she felt stronger to face the challenges ahead. So, Eliza continued to get involved in community projects, determined to prove her worth. Meanwhile, Amanda kept an eye on the situation, ready to defend Eliza whenever necessary. Their friendship flourished, but tensions in the town also grew, promising future conflicts. Eliza was determined to demonstrate her value to the Willow Creek community. She volunteered for several community projects, from park cleanups to organizing local events. Each small act of goodwill was an attempt to rebuild the trust she had lost. Amanda was by her side, helping whenever she could. However, the suspicious glances and murmurs continued. Martha, in particular, was always present, watching Eliza's every move and whispering her doubts to anyone who would listen. "Did you see how she tries to blend in?" Martha said to a group of residents during a park event. "She thinks she can just come back, and everyone will forget what happened." These whispers began to create a hostile environment. At a town council meeting, Martha stood up to speak. "With all due respect, I think we should reconsider who we allow to participate in our community projects. Eliza Grayson has a past we can't ignore." Eliza felt her heart tighten at these words, but remained firm. Amanda was the first to speak in her defense. "Everyone makes mistakes, Martha. Eliza is trying to change and contribute positively. We can't judge her for what happened years ago." The room fell silent as the residents pondered Amanda's words. Eliza knew earning everyone's trust would take time, but she was grateful to have someone by her side. Meanwhile, veiled threats began to emerge. Eliza found an anonymous message left on her porch: "Leave before it's too late." Fear began to infiltrate her determination, but she knew she couldn't back down now. She told Amanda about the message. "Someone wants me to leave, but I'm not giving up so easily." Amanda held her hand, conveying strength. "We're not alone. We'll find out who's behind this and protect your new life here." The situation began to weigh even more on Eliza, especially when her father, Mr. Grayson, showed growing concern. "I've seen the tension in town, Eliza. It's affecting all of us," he said while they tended the garden together. Eliza sighed, feeling the weight of responsibility. "I know, Dad, but I can't run. Not again." Mr. Grayson stopped and looked directly at her. You don't have to face this alone. We can find a way to solve this together. Eliza hesitated, but decided to tell her father about the threats. I received an anonymous message. Someone wants me to leave. But I'm not giving up, Dad. Not this time. Mr. Grayson was silent for a moment, processing the information. We have to be careful. And maybe it's time to tell Amanda what really happened. Eliza knew he was right. That night, she invited Amanda for dinner, and after a quiet meal, began to tell her story. She spoke about her involvement in Baltimore, how she testified against dangerous people in a fraud trial, and the consequences that followed. I thought I had escaped, but it seems the past followed me here, Eliza confessed, tears in her eyes. Amanda listened attentively, holding Eliza's hand as she began to cry. That explains a lot. But we need proof to fight these threats. We need to find out who's behind this and why. Eliza wiped her tears and nodded. The library has old records and local newspapers. Maybe we'll find something to help us. The next day, they went to the library. Mrs. Higgins, the librarian, was surprised by the visit but willing to help. What exactly are you looking for? She asked. Eliza needs information about an old fraud case and any connection to people in town, Amanda explained. Mrs. Higgins brought a box of newspaper clippings and old files. Eliza and Amanda spent hours poring over the documents until they found what they were looking for. A series of articles about the trial Eliza testified in. To their astonishment, they discovered that Martha had a connection to the accused. She had lost money in the fraud scheme, and her anger at Eliza seemed to be a personal vendetta. Eliza was shocked by the discovery. That explains why she's so determined to drive me away. But we need more proof to confront her. Amanda agreed. Now we have a path to follow. Let's gather more information and prepare a plan to expose Martha. And then, you can finally live in peace. With a new sense of purpose, Eliza felt closer to solving the mysteries that haunted her return. And with Amanda by her side, she knew she could face any challenge that came. In the following days, Eliza and Amanda dedicated themselves to digging deeper into Martha's connection to the fraud case. They spent hours in the library, sifting through files and old newspaper clippings. Mrs. Higgins, aware of the importance of what they were doing, helped whenever she could, bringing piles of relevant documents. We need to find something concrete that links Martha to the accused fraudster, Amanda said, flipping through a stack of yellowed newspapers. There has to be some correspondence, some document that proves the connection, Eliza agreed, feeling the urgency of the situation. Finally, on a quiet afternoon in the library, Amanda found an old letter. It was a correspondence between Martha and the accused, dated just before the trial. The letter revealed that Martha had invested a significant amount of money in the fraud scheme, hoping for returns that never came. This is exactly what we needed, Eliza said, holding the letter with trembling hands. But we need more proof to convince the community. Eliza and Amanda continued to comb through the files, and their searches finally paid off. They found bank documents showing transactions between Martha and the accused, proving she was financially involved. We have what we need, Amanda said, exhausted but determined. Now we need to plan how to present this to the community. Eliza agreed, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. We have to do this the right way. If it's not convincing, Martha could turn the situation against us. In the days following the community meeting, tension in Willow Creek increased. The accusations against Martha brought up old wounds and new suspicions. While the formal investigation was underway, Eliza and Amanda knew they needed to gather more support to ensure the truth prevailed. Amanda began visiting more residents, explaining the evidence they had found and trying to win allies. We have to show everyone that the truth is on our side, Amanda said to Eliza during a morning walk. Eliza agreed, but was worried about the constant threats. We need to be careful, Amanda. Martha won't give up easily. One afternoon, as Eliza and Amanda were reviewing the documents once more at the Grayson house, Mr. Grayson entered the room with a serious look. "I received an anonymous letter today," he said, handing the paper to Eliza. The letter contained a clear threat. "If you continue, you will regret it." Eliza felt a chill run down her spine, but determination grew within her. "They're trying to intimidate us." Amanda nodded, with a determined expression. "This just proves we're on the right track. We can't be shaken." As they continued to investigate, Eliza discovered another important detail. Rummaging through the records in the library, she found an old diary belonging to her mother. In the last pages, there were mentions of Martha and the accused fraudster, describing suspicious meetings and financial transactions. "My mother knew everything," Eliza said, with tears in her eyes. "She tried to warn, but no one listened." With this new material, Eliza and Amanda felt more prepared to face Martha. They decided they needed to gather a group of supporters for a private meeting before the next community assembly. They wanted to ensure that when they presented the new evidence, they had the support of a significant portion of the community. On the day of the private meeting, Eliza and Amanda were nervous but hopeful. They invited residents who believed in the truth and were willing to hear the new evidence. The Graysons' living room was filled with people, some curious, others skeptical, but all willing to listen. Amanda started the meeting by presenting the evidence found again, this time including the new details from Eliza's mother's diary. These entries show that Martha and the accused fraudster were involved long before the trial, Amanda explained. Eliza's mother tried to expose the truth but was silenced. Eliza then spoke, her voice firm despite the tension. "My mother was an honorable woman who tried to protect our community. Now, it's up to us to continue her work and ensure the truth is revealed." The faces around the room showed a mixture of shock and understanding. Several residents began asking questions, trying to understand the connections and motivations better. "Why would Martha do this?" one of them asked. "She lost a lot of money in the fraud scheme," Eliza replied. "And in trying to get revenge, she used her influence to keep everyone in the dark about her own involvement." By the end of the meeting, many of the attendees were convinced and promised to support Eliza and Amanda at the next community assembly. "We're with you," said one of the oldest residents. "We can't allow this injustice to continue." However, victory was far from guaranteed. Martha still had powerful allies and resources she could use to defend herself. Eliza knew they needed to be careful and strategic. The night before the assembly, Eliza and Amanda stayed up late, reviewing their evidence and planning every detail of their presentation. "We have to be meticulous," Amanda said. "Any loophole, and she could turn the situation against us." Eliza agreed, feeling the heavy responsibility on her shoulders. "My mother deserves justice, and our community deserves the truth." Finally, as the night drew to a close, they said their goodbyes, exhausted but ready for the challenge ahead. "Tomorrow is the day," Amanda said, giving Eliza a hug. "Let's do this." Eliza smiled, feeling strengthened by Amanda's friendship and support. "Yes, let's." And with that, they prepared to face the greatest test of their lives, determined to expose the truth and protect those they loved. The day of the community assembly dawned with a mix of anticipation and tension in Willow Creek. Eliza and Amanda met early to review the documents and evidence one last time. "Today, we're going to expose the truth," Amanda said, trying to instill confidence in Eliza. The central square was crowded when they arrived. Practically all the town's residents were present, eager to hear the developments in the allegations against Martha. The atmosphere was charged, and the tension was palpable. When the meeting began, the town council leader, Mr. Thompson, took the floor. "We're here to discuss the allegations made against Martha and to hear any new evidence that may be presented." Amanda was the first to speak, providing an overview of the evidence and documents they had collected. As you know, we found letters and bank records linking Martha directly to the fraud scheme, Amanda said, with a firm and clear voice. Eliza then took the floor, holding her mother's diary. This is my mother's diary, where she documented her suspicions and interactions between Martha and the accused fraudster. My mother tried to warn the community but was silenced. She began reading excerpts from the diary, detailing suspicious meetings and financial transactions. The room fell silent as the residents absorbed the gravity of the information. Martha, who was sitting in the front row, abruptly stood up. "This is a farce. You are all against me." Her voice was full of anger and fear. Eliza remained calm. "These documents don't lie, Martha, and the community deserves to know the truth." Mr. Thompson called for silence and announced that the council would investigate the allegations thoroughly. "We will ensure all evidence is reviewed and justice is served." After the meeting, many residents approached Eliza and Amanda, offering support and apologies for doubting them. "You were very brave," said Mrs. Harper, one of the town's oldest residents. "We need more people like you in our community." Despite the growing support, Eliza knew there was still a long way to go. Martha still had allies and resources, and the threats could intensify. The days following the assembly were marked by a tense calm in Willow Creek. While the town council reviewed the evidence, Eliza and Amanda tried to return to a normal routine, but the shadow of threats persisted. One night, Eliza and Mr. Grayson were at home when they heard a strange noise outside. "Stay here, Dad," Eliza said, grabbing a flashlight and going to check. When she opened the door, she found a package left on the porch. With trembling hands, she unwrapped the package and found a broken porcelain doll with a note. "This will be you if you don't stop." Eliza felt a chill, but determination grew inside her. "They're trying to scare us, Dad, but we won't give up." The next day, she reported the threat to the local police, who promised to investigate, but Eliza knew she needed to take extra measures to protect her family. Amanda suggested hiring a private security guard to watch the house, at least until the situation was resolved. Meanwhile, tension in the town increased. Some residents began to take sides, some supporting Eliza and others, out of fear or loyalty, remaining on Martha's side. Community meetings became more heated, with intense discussions about who should lead the town. One night, after one of these meetings, Eliza was walking home when she was surrounded by a group of people. "You're destroying our community with your lies," said one of them, advancing towards her. Eliza, scared but determined, raised her voice. "These are not lies. All I want is the truth and justice for all of us." The confrontation was interrupted by Amanda's arrival, who ran to defend Eliza. "Leave her alone. You know she's right. Martha is manipulating all of us." The group backed off, but the tension in the air was palpable. Amanda took Eliza back home, where Mr. Grayson waited anxiously. "We need to be more careful," he said, hugging his daughter. "They're getting desperate." Eliza knew the danger was increasing, but she also felt they were closer to the truth. "We'll get through this, Dad. We're together." In the following days, the pressure on Martha increased. The town council's investigation was nearing a conclusion, and everything indicated that the truth would finally be revealed. Eliza and Amanda continued to prepare, ready to face whatever came their way. With the truth about to be exposed and the community divided, Eliza knew the climax of her battle was near. She needed to be strong, not just for herself, but for all those who believed in her and the justice she sought. The tension in Willow Creek was at its peak when the town council scheduled a special meeting to reveal the results of their investigation. Eliza and Amanda prepared meticulously, reviewing all the details and documents one last time. "Today is the day," Amanda said, trying to instill confidence in Eliza. The town council meeting room was packed, with practically all the residents present. There was a constant murmur of nervous conversations and expectations in the air. Mr. Thompson, the council leader, took the floor. Today, we are here to present the results of our investigation into the allegations made against Martha. The documents were passed around, with residents reading the evidence Eliza and Amanda had collected. The silence in the room was palpable as Mr. Thompson began to speak again. The evidence presented is conclusive. Martha was indeed involved with the accused fraudster, and her subsequent actions were to hide her involvement and protect her own interests. Martha, who was sitting in the front row, abruptly stood up. "This is absurd. You're all against me." Her voice was full of anger and despair, but the evidence was irrefutable. Eliza then took the floor, her voice firm and clear. "My mother tried to expose the truth years ago and was silenced. Today, we are here to ensure the truth finally comes to light." The residents began to murmur among themselves, some in shock, others in understanding. One of the oldest residents, Mr. Harper, stood up. "Martha, we trusted you for years. How could you betray our trust like this?" Martha, speechless, realized she had lost the battle. Mr. Thompson announced that measures would be taken to ensure justice was served and that Martha would be held accountable for her actions. After the meeting, many residents approached Eliza and Amanda, offering support and apologies for doubting them. "You were very brave," said Mrs. Harper. "We owe you a lot for bringing the truth to light." Eliza felt a wave of relief and gratitude. "All we want is justice for our community." With the truth finally revealed, the atmosphere in Willow Creek began to change. Martha, now exposed, lost her influence over the community. The threats against Eliza ceased, and the town began to unite around a new sense of justice and transparency. Eliza, Amanda, and Mr. Grayson could finally breathe a sigh of relief. "We did it, Dad," Eliza said, hugging him. The truth prevailed. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to our channel and supporting us through the thanks button. Thank you.